Well, we got this pretty new reflection in here. It says it's a, what's the date on this thing? I think it says 2020, 11/20/20. Right there. I don't know if that makes it a 20 or a 21. But it's pretty new. We're going to go take a look at it. You can see we already got it all wrapped up. That's just the way we do things. We want it nice and clean. We got pads, all these moving pads and everything. We throw them all inside, all over the furniture, floor. We don't want to get anything in the coach. We're going to go up here and take a look at it. Here it is. I think a tree branch hit this or something, if I remember correctly. This is one of those Winegard Air 360s. I hate these things. I don't know how good they work or not, but it's kind of close to the air conditioner, which really you should have. The regular Winegards, they say from the center to any obstruction, I believe, is 18 inches. So really that probably needs to be relocated. But one of the other reasons why I don't like them is because you got to get power to it. Now when they build these things, they bring all the power, that's fine. But when you take this off here, when you take it off right up underneath that rim, if you were to flip this over, you'll see all the guts to that. So now I have to make a base for it in order for it to get mounted properly. But even at this stuff doesn't seem to be lasting too well already. This here, you can see how it's pulling. A lot of stuff doesn't want to stick to plastic. So these are probably the war wounds. 1, 2, 3. We get all that. Get your typical die-core roof. Slobber moron. That's what they want you to do. So this, it must be pretty new, because it looks like a pretty clean roof. But like I said, we're going to rip all this up. Got another one here. So I don't know if we got tangled up in a tree branch or hail or what, but evidently, like I said, we're going to put a new roof on it. It still must be pretty new because it's still under warranty. So we got to get this thing back fixed up so we can get it to the warranty department. I guess they want to see it. But like I said, that's your typical RV roof. Doesn't look anything different than all the others, you know. It sounds like a broken record when I say it, but it's just a shame. They just want to get them built, get them out, get them sold, and obviously we don't have a cover for here. I like to see covers on there, you know. I like to see covers on here. A lot of times I've seen these things just from the wind going over it, it'll kind of flutter them, and then they just start opening up, and then you get water in there and you get a leak. So this here is just an access point. That's all it is, in case you want to put something else in here. But there isn't very much to it. So looking at this roof, it comes up, and then what it does is it's got a little bit sharper camber because of the distance here compared to there. This is the camber on here is not the same as this camber. And also I'm going up and then I'm going this way. The roofing doesn't like all that. The roofing wants to sit two-dimensionally, and then when I come over here, it's going to drop down. There is no way that roofing, and I've done quite a few reflections, there is no way it's going to come all the way up here, over here, and then drop back down all in one shot. Not like this. This stuff is really thin and cheap, so it'll lay down pretty easy. But it's not, the stuff that we use is a much thicker material, and it's structured. It has a weave in it, and it's not going to do all that. I'm going to have burps and you know, basically bubbles in there, and I don't want to have that. So more than likely we're going to put this down in at least 2 pieces. The last time we did and tried to come up here, we still had another issue with it wanting to lay down right without it being all burped up. So I wouldn't be surprised if I put 3. But when I put them together, like right in here, you'll have a 4-inch weld. That's enormous. A commercial is 3. So we give it that extra. Same here if I put another one. Once you weld those 2 pieces together, it's done. It's like welding 2 pieces of steel together. It's the same principle. So that may be the way we go about this to make sure it comes out sitting much better and cleaner. You can see the way this air conditioner is here. See, you get all this water coming up here, and up underneath there's a foam gasket. And you're going to get all this pollen, all this dirt. It's going to start hitting that gasket, and it's going to start wearing on it. And then eventually it'll break down. You have some leaks in there. So you gotta, that's why we put them up on curbs. That's the right way to do it. You can see the foam gasket right here on this particular unit. So now all the water on this one is going to be rolling down this way pretty hard. So like I said, well, when we put the curbs on there, that makes a big difference. It just basically gets everything to go in a different direction. Gets the water to go around. So otherwise, it doesn't look like they even got too much caulking on here. You want to look for little fractures in here on your own coach. You want to look for little fractures. If you see it, that's pretty much saying that the roof has reached its lifetime. Or if you see what I call eggshelling, it looks like little fine cracks in it, then it's reached its lifetime. But you can see even the way they did this roof, you got some slight bubbles on here, you know, very slight on this, and this is a lot thinner. So when we put ours on there, it's going to be a big difference. So we want it to sit smooth and flat and look clean. So, but like you said, you can see we got everything all taped up. I want to protect the awnings. That's the first thing we do, protocol, protect the coach. So you can see we got all our scaffold wrapped around. So we're going to rip this apart. We are going to rip up the decking, and we're going to check everything underneath there, and we'll redeck it. That's just normal protocol with us. I'm pretty sure that's how we're going to go. I got to look at the work order, but 99% of the time, that's the way it goes. So, all right, well, let me get to work. All right, so we just took off this back bar right here. Here's what it is. That one on the back here as a termination bar. It lapped over, but all they do is put this tape on there. There's no butyl on the back side at all. Not even butyl, no caulking or anything. So here's the roofing right here. The roofing right there. It just came down like that. So that's there's nothing really protecting that. Not even your screw holes. So it's a good thing we are putting a new roof on it. We'll see what's going on underneath it. But they put tape on the side here, and then they still have, you know, that's drywall mesh. That's all it is. You know, and then we'll take the screws out. Looks like there's some rust on them already right there. That's what it looks like. We'll take a few out and check them. It's just kind of ironic that we have you know, screws that are already rusty up underneath the membrane, right? So then we'll check everything else out. So we did the same thing here. They just stapled this on to hold it as they were working, I'm guessing. But here's your roofing right here. That's your roof membrane that came out, right? But there's nothing on the back of this either. Nothing to protect any of that. They just come right off. Okay. So they just put a couple staples to hold it right there. There's another one. It's just a quick way to get it lined up. Then you go back, fill the screws. But they didn't put anything behind it. You think for what you spend on these things, they'd at least do a little better. But get it built, get it out, get it sold. Okay, I'll just pop right off. There's nothing behind any of that. So that's not cool. Barely a lick of caulking on the top there. That's crazy. It's a good thing we're putting a roof on it for them. So there's another grand design up there too on our channel. There's a couple of them, I think. But I know we've done quite a few reflections. So, all right. Well, then this here had one of those Air 360 antennas. And this was hooked up, but the wires, there's some other wires that go to a modem, and they're supposed to be fed down to power. So I don't see any in here, any of those wires. They were just hanging inside there. So I got to make a plate and everything. I do not put on 360s. This one had one. I'll put that back on. But for a replacement, they're a pain in the butt to do, because now I got to get it up off the roof line. But if you flip it over, this Air 360, if you flip it over, it's all open. You can see all the electronics and all the, you know, the gadgets inside there. And all they do is just screw it to the roof and slobber it with caulking. If you remember that from the first section of the video we did, they just slobber it on there. That's all they do. Alrighty, this is our fine grand design. So what this is, just a reflective barrier. That's all it does. It's supposed to help reflect some UV lights, but it really needs to have a cavity down here, about 3/4 of an inch. LT Tech and Solar Board, they make some reflective sheathing, and when you put it on, this would be glued to the backside of the sheathing. The aluminum would be, and basically, if you read their instructions, you're supposed to have a 3/4 inch gap to help, and you don't have that with all this. So we're not going to get rid of it. All we're going to do is slice it here, and we're going to tuck it down. That's all we're doing. So this was my concern, because over here where that weird antenna was, that Air 360, right in here there was supposed to be extra wires to get down to a modem, and I don't see any wires at all. There's no wires in there, so it just wasn't hooked up. But all we're going to do is we'll tuck them back up inside in the antenna. That's all we can do, because obviously it's not getting used anyways, but we'll obviously reinstall that antenna. So then what we're going to do is we go around, and I want to see where the wires are going into here. We do that on all of them. I want to make sure that they're all secured, that there isn't any sharp ferrules. Ferrules are just little pieces of pipe. What they do is they run the wires up through there so you cannot put a fastener through it. It's a great idea, but usually the ferrules themselves are pretty sharp on the inside, and they tend to compromise the wire. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. And then once we peel all this up, we'll get the insulation out of the way, and I want to check all the trunk lines. So we still got some more sheathing we got to get up and actually off the roof. But then after that, we took off all that OSB stuff. We're not going to be putting that back on, but we'll be putting on BC plywood is what we use. So this is the decking right here. So that's what we're trying to get off the roof, right down there. So a lot of people think, and this I've run across this before, is that there's a smooth side to OSB and a rough side. So the way you know you're putting it down right is you'll see these lines right here, okay? And it's not really a smooth side. It's smoother than one other side. But that's because when they go to press it, and they have this big machine, and they put all the strands in there, and they put all the resin in there, and then they just press it. But to make sure that the plate that comes up that presses it, to make sure the resins don't stick to the plate, they put wax on it. So really that smooth side is wax. And we have seen many coaches come in here where they've used the wrong side, and it just releases because the glue isn't going to stick to the wax, right? So that's what it is. Or you may even drive down the road and you'll see an RV and the roofing itself is puffing up. Yeah, that's typically why. So I don't know if they cover that under the warranty, but like I said, this is the smooth side here that they did put face down. Look how thin this is. It's just 3/8 OSB there. I don't think, let's see, it would probably be, I'm trying to think of how OSB runs. They usually run by 1/16. So it's probably like 5/16 OSB. It's really thin. We're going to be putting 1/2 inch, like I said, BC grade up on here. So, all right, well, let's get to work. We checked everywhere. The wire's not coming up through here. There's a couple over on the other side there that are coming up, but they're all coming through the plywood. They're not coming through a ferrule. But we did come across this hot mess. Look at there. That says Smokey the Bear going to come pay you a visit. I don't know why they did all that. I don't like it at all. So we're going to correct that problem. Yeah. They got this jumper going down here. See, they wired that in, connected them together, and then they brought them over. But, and look at here. Look at there. Yeah, okay. That one's tight. But this one is just a positive. That one's okay when it sparks against that gold wire right there. Yeah, this is the neutral. So we're going to have to fix that mess. I don't like it. That's why we open these up, because I want to see what's going on. We're going to check all these trunk lines here in a few minutes. So we'll get all that too. So, and then, you know, I think we lost our battery powered tools. So now we're back to manual. That's probably why it's taking us so long. That and the union card on his ball cap. Get that Manuel driver. Manuel, I thought that was the president of Mexico. All right, we can be checking. They got Wagos in there. I like those Wagos. That's what these are. These are called Wagos, and they just snap. You lift that little orange button right there, lift it up. So if you ever had to fix or replace that light, pull the light down, just lift this up, that little toggle. It comes up like a so. You pull the wire out, replace it, and that's you. But anyhow, I like those. We use them all the time. All right, they're not cheap either, but they're good. That's why I'm surprised to see them in a camper. You know, but this just ain't cool. They should have had it, if they're going to do that, put it in a box or something. But like I said, we're going to correct all this mess. You know. All right, let's get back. Quiet on the set. Got to turn the lens thing on. Open the lens. All right, so now what we're doing is looking for any compromising in the tape. That's what we're checking out. And then a lot of times the wires will start rubbing. This is just foam, and they just back and forth like this. They'll make a little hole. So what we usually do is just put a little piece of aluminum on there underneath it, and then just tape it on there, much like they got there. So but we usually put an actual piece of aluminum metal on there to make sure it doesn't break through. So we got a couple of areas that we're checking out. Mostly it looks pretty well though. It looks pretty good. So what did you find over here?
It's just where they had it.
Oh, just right there? Okay. So overall it's looking pretty well. A lot of times, like you said, we'll see these transitions just come apart. So, you know, if the tape doesn't look like, that's obviously the ductwork for the AC, and we put all that back down, we tape all that back in, and then we tape the duct, and we tape everything up, so all the air is forcing in there instead of even little air leaks, so they don't end up anywhere else but inside the trunk line. So, we still haven't addressed this. We'll get to this, so I'll show you all that. And, like I said, we just like to see how things are kind of put together here. Make sure there's not going to be a problem down the road. That's the whole idea of pulling the roof deck up. Also, you'll notice there's no glue. They don't use glue anymore. And the screws, they weren't rusty at all. It must have just been either something the way it looked when it went in, or dirt, or whatever. I don't know. But they weren't rusty. I asked one of the guys there. So got a little wiggly on our truss here. The sheathing will pull all that tight. But you need to glue these down. These things rack and flex and twist so much. But what it ends up doing, all that energy has to go somewhere. And where's it going to go? It's going to go into the screws. And when it goes into the screws, they'll start wallowing out. You don't want to screw these. What happens when you screw them is you get splits. You need to staple them into these. See? There's another one there. There's another one there. There's another one here. See? They're splitting. So obviously we're going to glue this all back together, but we use staples for it, and I went out and years ago I got guns that are designed for sheathing. You will literally rip the sheathing apart before you get that daggone staple out of there. So it is strong, but that's what you need to do, and you can sew it up. You won't have to worry about it splitting, and especially with the adhesive that we're going to be putting on here too. So we glue it all down. So everything, like I said, overall everything looks pretty well. So now that everything looks decent, then we're going to end up putting the insulation back in, and then we'll start getting the decking on. So, but there's more splitting right there. Not every single one is split, but I mean you can see some of this is probably just poor lumber. That's all it is. But those are definitely from, that one there is definitely from the screws. So even though the screws aren't that big, you can't run, like, you know, the screws right here, that's the closest I've seen. But even if you were to sew it down there and make sure it's tight, like I said, you'll split them right up. So another one. So, and like I said, we're checking all these here. We want to make sure everything is nice and snug and tight. Make sure all the tape is good. That looks pretty well. So, and then the wires they have here, it's just going through the ceiling. These are ones I said earlier, and that's going through the plywood. You know, the ceiling here, that's just sheathing. That's all it is. But there's no metal ferrule in there that would compromise it. So, same with this one. And usually you'll find them on right here. I'm going to put a bushing on that one. See how sharp that is? That's going to probably compromise it. I don't know if you can see. I can't see the other side, but oh, there we go. Is there anything on that side?
Yet.
Not yet. Yeah, this is brand new, so it probably hasn't got any miles on it. But we'll be putting a bushing in there, and we'll check all the other ones where they come up through. That's the only one I've seen so far. And so we just check for, like I said, mainly the 120s is typically where we find them. So let's get a bushing. Well, that's what it is. It's just a plastic bushing. That's it. When I say they won't spend one more red cent on your coach, there it is right there. So it just seats inside. That'll be fine. That'll stay there. So sometimes if we find some that don't work for whatever, then we'll take a piece of loom and we'll cut it and shove it down inside there. So we brought both up. But those aren't expensive. That's actually an electrical code on residential and commercial work because of that reason, because it would chafe the wire. So, but they don't have to follow any codes. I don't think there's any codes for RVs at all. So, but all right, so we got that fixed, and then like I said, we're getting the ductwork all done. So, all right, like I said, next we'll fix that wire, and then we'll move on to something else. All right, that's the way it's supposed to go. We go right down there onto the hot, onto the neutral, right into those screws. That's the way it's supposed to go. This is just a ground. It'll be fine. And we'll just get that wire to sit a little better. But that's it. That's the way it should have been done. Don't need that jumpers in there. It's just a hazard having those things out like that. Alright, move on to this. So now we're getting everything all stable down. We're getting all the new decking on here. And we put the radiant barrier back in. All we do is just cut it and drop it down inside there. And then so we can get some glue on here. So that's what we're doing. Gluing her all up. As long as we get her glued up, I'm going to stable her down. And that's where we're going. We'll get her down there. Alright, so this is the passenger side. We've already got the roof sprayed with the adhesive. So we got all that. And then once it flashes off, we're going to roll it. But we're going to have to put this in at least a couple of pieces. Because of the way the transition comes up, and then it levels off, and then it goes down. That one up there, that sharp one, you never get that. By the time you try to roll all this, I'd have a big bubble up there. So, and then also it's got square shoulders. On some of the other ones with rounded shoulders, you can get away with it because you can absorb some of that material in here. But when you come over and just bang, it's not going to work. It's just going to look like a hot mess. So, that being said, like I said, we've got these sheets here, and then I'm going to weld it all back together. And commercially, it's a 3-inch lap. I'm going to do a 4-inch lap when I weld them. So that's where we are so far with this. Just wait for it to flash off, so it's not so gooey. Because right now it's a little gooey. See? Gotta wait for that to tack up. Once it tacks up, we roll her out. Well, we are all done with our grand design. This is a 2020. So we put a, I don't know if you want to call it a logo, it's just really a stamp, and it just tells us how old the roof is. We do that, one, so when it comes back, we can monitor the roof system to see how it's performing. If there's any issues, you know, we can kind of either address it with the manufacturer. We've never, ever had to do that. Even when I do commercial work, I've never had to do that. But also, when he goes to sell this, a lot of these camper roofs, I mean, obviously, they're junk. So I'd hate for someone to, you know, climb up here and go, hey, you know, these camper roofs, or even the customer, potential new salesperson, new buyer, shall I say, comes up and wants to inspect the roof, or doesn't inspect the roof, and says, oh, those, I got to talk you down, is what I'm getting at. I want to talk you down because I'll have to put a roof on it. You know, hey, you say, hey, I just had that put on in February 22. So you can see the way we did this is a Winegard Air 360. We do not install these. This one had one, but we do not install them. A lot of these Air 360s have a Wi-Fi, and you have to find a power source. And up underneath, if you were to flip this over, you can see all the guts. So what I had to do is put a plate on there and get that sealed up, and then I had to get these legs on there, and then also the coax comes up from underneath. So if you remember from the first part of the video, it was squashed down to the roof. We had to scrape off as much of that caulking as we could, and then the wire just comes straight up directly right about there in the center. And so we put in a little wire coming down and a port right there so we could bring it over. So it's just a lot of work. It really is a lot of work. But we don't run wires. So in this case, he had the coax. But on some other ones, like I said, when they want to have Wi-Fi hooked up or whatever, we don't do all that. We don't run it because it has to go to a power source. So if it's there, that's one thing. But if it's not, we don't encourage those antennas at all. Mainly, like you said, for the install. So you can see we got all our boots. We got boots around here and a ladder. Everything's all heat welded. We've got the 2 stands in the back. And that just gives us some balance as the unit is running. And we get some counter flash up in the front. That goes up under the lid. And basically when the water comes down, the rain, when it comes down, it's going to hit that, trickle off. And then we got built-in counter flash, which is much like this right here, on all of the curbs. All of them are like that. But that piece right there will push it down below that counter flash on the curb. And then the water's going to run right out. So what we're trying to do is just give the water another direction to go. There's a foam gasket up inside there. And what I don't want to have happen is the water trickle down and get on the top side of that curb, on the top side of our counter flash, and just kind of get into the foam gasket at all. That really protects a lot of it right there. So we put some, he bought the lids. Some of these lids don't fit. So if you do have, you know, anything you're bringing in, if you do, then make sure there's a max there. Make sure you get vents that fit certain power fans. I'm not talking about a little fan with a little fan in the vent. I'm talking about this is an actual power fan. It'll raise up automatically, close automatically, because the distance here is going to be different, and sometimes the lid inside there to the vent won't open up all the way if this is the wrong size, and then the unit doesn't work at all. So I definitely want to thank the customer for bringing this to us. We really appreciate the work, and so I want to get that out. All right, so moving on. All right, so right up in here, solar, that solar was actually way over there. It was way on that corner. So we moved it back here. There was that much slack. All that wire just came right around. It actually goes down right around in here somewhere. So we moved it there because if he's going to want to put solar on, this is all the room he's going to have, you know, to put it on, and maybe even over here. So that's where it needs to be. Same thing with the Max Air fan. We got all those, and obviously that air conditioner as well. So went around. We got 2 strikes of caulking all the way around the whole coach. Come out looking awesome. Looks great. And let's see what else I got to go over. Oh, all right. So this type of roof. Let's see if I can get you a better view of it. May have to get a couple views. You can see how this goes down like that. Then I'll come back this way. See if I can get that one. You can see how it goes up and then drops down. This type of roofing material, this is a real commercial roofing material. It is a 60 mil commercial grade TPO. You're going to see this material on a restaurant, a library, an office building, a hospital. It's the same exact membrane. That being said, it being a structured membrane, it wants to lay 2-dimensionally. It does not want to do all this dance. So when it comes up here and then it comes down there and then drops down there, it just is not going to work, especially with a square shoulder. On some of them, we can get away with rolling it over, and then we have what's basically, it's called a fish mouth, and then what we do is we fold it, and then we tuck it, and then we weld it back all together. But that being said, we went around, and I had to put 3 sheets on this, but I got a 4-inch weld. Commercially, it's a 3-inch weld, so I put a 4-inch weld on this. I've never had any issues with them at all. I mean, it's all fused back together, much like you'd weld a couple pieces of steel together. Very similar. You know, that's how it works. But instead of using a medium, this type is literally plastic, and when you heat it up that hot, it will literally fuse back together. So got the same counter flashing on the front. Nice clean strike on the front here on both sides. You know, it looks good. You get some, obviously some gutters on here. So everything's looking good on our reflection. Makes it nice when you have all these catwalks and a way to get around the whole camper to work. And if you see somebody that you're potentially going to hire and they're working off of ladders, I'm going to tell you that your job is not going to get done right, because after a while they are not going to want to climb up that ladder, and they'll go, oh yeah, that thing's okay. You know, you can't work comfortably, you can't work and get everything done right unless you have something like this. And if you're doing it for a living, why don't you have something like this? That would be another question. So I mean, if you're in a business to do it, and you might as well have the proper equipment and tools to do it, right? So the take this tape off of here, and this is obviously our skylight, and what we got over here is a fan. So what happens in a lot of the, almost every one of them, we end up having, when the condensation sits on here, when you have a cool morning, and then the sun comes up and it starts warming up. Well, now this condensation that's on the outside, it will start, obviously it'll get evaporated off by the sun. But when you have condensation on here, that means this whole piece is cold, and the inside of the lens, you're going to have condensation on it as well. So what happens is the condensation up underneath will start rolling down, and then it'll hit down there and it'll start rotting out the frame, and it'll start rotting out the ceiling panel. So on here, like on this particular one, they had some wood showing from the frame of the coach, so we wrapped it with aluminum so you couldn't see it. It just looks a lot cleaner, so you're not looking at bare wood. So what this is a solar fan. What this is an intake, and inside here is a trough, and there's a vent in there, and there's a trough going in here, and there's a vent in there. So what's going to happen is when the sun comes up, evaporating this kicks on. When that kicks on, so park this in the sun. I recommend parking in the sun. They work best in the sun. Don't park it in the shade. And this roof will handle it. It's a commercial roof. That's what it's designed for, so you're not going to hurt it at all. But when that fan kicks on, it draws the air from here, and it draws it right over, boom, and it exhausts it. So it'll keep going all day. It'll keep going. So then you know it's going to stay dry and you won't have those issues. We started putting these in a while back, and I designed this system here. I've had a couple where they come back and I'm like, there's nothing wrong with meaning the welds or anything. It was all sealed. And then when I got inside and saw all the condensation that was sitting in there, then that's obviously what the problem was. So that's why I designed this system here. On a ply foam roof like a Class A maybe, or even a Class C, they're so thermal tight that the moisture will sit in there, and again the water will start condensating down, and then it'll get up underneath the roof deck, and the roof deck will start wicking all that water much like a sponge, and then you have it all loose. So you need to have these fans in there. But obviously, so what we're trying to do here, I want to make sure when we put this together, there's no more problems. We solved it all. Get it all done. You don't want to do these things twice. They're too expensive to do twice. There's a lot of work to do them twice. So, and then like I said, I already pointed out the marking on there. And again, we put the 2 strikes all the way down. We checked everything around here. So everything's good. It's ready to roll. So what this is, and this is a piece of it. This is this is obviously a different color. But this is a piece of TPO. It's 60 mil is the thickness of it. So it's a 60 mil, and it's also what they call structured. And if you look, you'll see these little squares in there. There's a mesh that's built into this to give it its strength to resist against like hailstorms, and also against like tree branches. So this is what I'm saying is it's so strong that it just does not, it'll lay 2-dimensionally, but it's not going to do that whole dance all the way up and around. These reflections are probably the ones that I remember the most that we have a lot of the issue with, because of the way it goes up and down, and then the camber changes a little bit, especially in the front. It's a little sharper. But otherwise, the other thing we did is we changed all the insert trim, and that's right in here. And all the screws in here that we put in, those are all sealed. Every single screw is sealed in there on the outside. Obviously, it's sealed in the back behind the gutter. That's sealed. But then, if all that caulking doesn't ooze through the holes where the screws go, then we put some more caulking on it, and we seal all that, so we got a little ring around it, much like a little washer or grommet, if you will. So what that product is, or what it is right here. We don't sell anything, by the way. Some folks, call us. We don't sell anything. We put these videos together for the customers so they can see all what we did and all the work we went through to pull it back together. But we don't sell anything at all. You may be able to try to get online and see if you can find some of this. It's not going to be this here. I had to special order this stuff. But I know AP Products make some stuff. It's not the same though. I like this because it's got this nice roundness to it. So when the water comes down, it actually forces it to go into the gutter. You can see how it's kind of got that arc to it. So you can see that little groove right there. It sits inside the track. Turn this around. It sits inside that track right there. So one piece goes up underneath and the other sits on top. It's got kind of like you said, that groove where it slides in. And stay there. There you go. So we changed all that all the way here. All they had was the stuff that snapped in. It was that simple. It's cheap. It's real cheap. And all right, so we also changed it all the way down here too. All the way down the side. All the way down the side. So this coach is ready to go. And like I said, we want to thank the customer for trading with us. And just keep in mind, we get some horror shows in here. This was not one of the worst ones at all. We've had a couple that come in the shop, or a couple, almost every one that come in the shop. And what it does is we don't use a calendar anymore. We use what we call a board, because I don't want people to get upset and say, hey, I've had my coach down there for X amount of months, and it probably would be for months. So we get booked out pretty quick. And but we do custom work. And again, I want to address all the problems that the manufacturer failed to do, so it's done right. That's what the customer brought it in for. And I'm not going to hurry a coach up to get out just for the sake of getting another one in here. We're not a corporate America shop, and it's not fair to the customer. So the one that we're working on, or even you or whoever that brings it in, we're not going to rush yours out to get the guy complaining behind you going, hey, I got to get my coach in there. So keep that in mind if you decide to bring your coach this way. As much as we appreciate the work, understand that we are a specialty shop There's nobody that does this system here. I've had a couple of guys on YouTube that claim that they do these roofs, or copied my roof, which is kind of odd because I've never trained anybody to make my curbs or make all my components, and so I don't know how all that's going to fare. But again, you can, buyer beware, so they say, right? And now the inspections, we like to see this come back 30 at latest 60 days. I will show the customer how to do an inspection on it, but the reason why I want to do an initial inspection is make sure all the caulking is sitting well, and then we'll go back around and we'll check all our welds. And once we get all that done, for the initial one, then you come back every year, and it's free. All these are free. So some people say, well, it's too far. I mean, I'll show you how to do an inspection, but what I don't want to have happen is something that's real simple. And we got fail-safes built in, but if one fail-safe is starting to fail, we'll say, I can recognize that and get that fixed before it turns into a bigger problem. And I just would hate for somebody to come back and go, hey, I got this damage, that damage, and you go, well, this could have been fixed with, something simple, and now it turned into something more serious. So that's why we want to do the inspections, and again, they're free. So just bring them in, we'll check them out. The way you wash the roof is with just some dishwashing soap if you want. You can use some simple green. You can pressure wash the roofs, as long as you don't use a crazy pressure washer. Maybe something about a 2500, and just keep the wand off it, put a spray nozzle on it, and you can wash these roofs down no problem. We used to do that all the time for commercial work. When we'd have to inspect them, we'd wash the roofs down and look for any holes or anything, maybe some screws that got on the roof from a tech working on an air conditioner or something like that. So long story short, that's how you clean it. Real simple. And that's about it. So we appreciate you watching. And lastly, these are not DIY videos. We don't put them together as DIY videos. I really don't have time to answer all of these questions, and I really don't. And I'm not saying that because I'm better than anybody else. I'm just saying that I simply just don't have the time to do it. And I also don't know what you're working on. So some people say, hey, I got this or that. I don't know what kind of caulking you've got. I don't know what you're working on. I don't know what kind of roof membrane there is. There's a lot of things that come together, and a lot of our work is due to incompatibility and also improper construction or structural integrity, and just not knowing how to engineer it and pull the whole thing together. And I don't know what you're working on, so I don't want to give any bad advice and then it not work, and then you're shaking your fist at me going, you son of a gun, you told me this, that, the other thing, and it didn't work. So anyhow, like I said, we appreciate again for the customer to bring it in, and we appreciate y'all watching. If you got any questions, you can there should be a card on the video, but also here's all our info right here, 423-475-7663. And there's our website. There's a lot of information on our website about warranties and so forth. So it's rvroofinstall.com, and real simple. Thank you. Let's see, we got all the coaches that come out with a care package. This is our care package right here. See if I can zoom this in. We got a license plate right here if he wants to put that on. This is a piece of patch. It's an emergency patch in case he got a tree branch to come down, and if he had to patch it. Now this is a hot patch. This is the one that we would use much like this one around here. It's just the same material, but so that would have to be welded in. However, in an emergency, if you had a hole, and we'll say whatever right here, if you saw it in there, you take this and shove it in that hole, and you go squirt, 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 squirt all around in a circle like that, and load it. Then you squeeze it, it'll bubble up. That's done. This is a moisture cured product. That's what we use. We use all Chemlink products. This is Durlink. That's what we use. So that'll seal it. But then we also left a couple of patches. So the way you want to do your patching, get that there so it don't roll away. The way you want to do your patching, and we left a couple in here, is you would center it over your hole. Once you get it centered, take a pen and outline this. You want to outline it with a pen. Now you got that, just set that aside. And we left, there's a little bit of primer right here. You're going to need that primer. And I might as well empty everything out of this thing. Here's a brush. So now you want to go beyond the ink line. You want to go beyond that, maybe 3/8 of an inch or so. So you're going to be doing this on your ink line. Then you want to do the whole thing here. So you got all inside the ink line, and then about 3/8 over the ink line. You're going to take your patch, you're going to peel the back, this will peel, this film will peel right off, and you line it up, and I usually reach up underneath, and then I take my other hand and I kind of pull it this way. It keeps it nice and smooth. Now you've got your ink line there, you got your primer out here, you take your brush again and go over this, just like that, okay? Go over here, because it won't bond to this. That's the purpose of the primer. Nothing's going to bond to the TPO unless it's primed. So once you get that, then you come back with your product and you can put some caulking around there, and that's going to be a pretty darn good band-aid. Now if the customer really feels he needs to have a hot patch put on it, that's why we left this. We don't want someone to just go to if he can't come back here, we do them for free. If he can't make it here and he's somewhere else, he's like, yeah, that really needs to be put on there, you cannot interchange these materials. So some people think you can take this is a Carlisle membrane right here. Now Carlisle does make a couple other products, but it has to be the same Carlisle product. But you couldn't take, for instance, GAF and put it on there. You couldn't take Genflex and put it on there. You can't do that. They're two totally different companies, and they're two totally different products. I mean, they're still TPO, but it's kind of like Ford and Chevy. Yeah, they're both a car, they're both a truck, but they're not compatible. You're not swapping parts on them. So it may seem like it'll weld on there, and I've had people at supply houses tell me, oh yeah, we don't have any of that, but you can use this. You can't. There's enough chemical imbalance in each product where they're not compatible. So that's why we put that in there, just in case. So you got the primer, you got that, you got the brush, you got some caulking. And then the caulking, we like to see these come back in 30 days, okay? 30 to 60 days for an initial inspection. After that, it's annual. Now, if the customer says, well, I want to inspect it myself, we want them to go along, put a little friction on here to get it warmed up, and then this is going to stay tight anyways. But in the event he found something, hey, it looks a little loose or whatever, you can put a little bit more primer on there, and you can use that to just give it a little love, especially around the corners. You can go around the corners and everything like that if you had to. So that's why we put all that in there. Let's see, we got a magnet for maybe on your hood of your stove. Got a couple of pens here. Got a fancy dancy key tag with a beverage opener. We can't say beer, it's a beverage. So this is a checker tool. So this is used to check the joint, the welds. You go along like this, and if it pops in there and you find a little hole, we'll say there was a tiny bit, if you did, well, that's what you check for. And these things are gonna move a little bit. So if you did, then again, you can take the primer, take a little brush, put it all in there, take the caulking, and you're done. Okay, that'll hold it so we can get a look at it and make sure everything's all set. But like I said, that's what we like to see. It come back in about 30 days. I like to see them, but 60, all right. But I still want them inspected because I don't want to have a little tiny problem turn into a big problem and then an upset customer. So we got all of that there, and let's see what else we got here. Here is a sample of our product. This is a 60 mil commercial grade. And if you look real hard enough, you can probably see the little, see if I get the angle of this light in here from the shop. You can see these little squares. There's a mesh built into this, which gives it its strength. So that's where it'll resist hail damage. It'll resist tree branches. So it's really hard to poke through this. It truly is. You'd have to have something really hard and sharp to really get it. But if you had a big enough tree branch, that could possibly happen. So we get all that. And then like I said, get another key tag and everything in here. So that's the gist of it. So all the customers, they get these here, and we got an emblem on the back. There's one of our emblems here that we put on the back, and that's about it. So we leave all this with the customer, so Mr. and Mrs. Customer, at least they have all this stuff handy in case of an emergency. So we want to make sure everything stays tight and everything, you got all the products you need, so on. So obviously if you have any issues, there's our telephone number, 423-475-7663. Keeping all this in mind, these are not intended for DIY. I just simply don't have the time to answer all these DIY questions. And the other thing is, I don't know what you're dealing with. I don't know what you have. I don't know what products are on there. And I have guys ask me all the time, what can I use for this? What can I use for that? And I don't want to steer anybody in the wrong direction and find out, okay, well, you got silicone on your windows. What can I use to do my windows? Well, you're going to have to dig all that out. You have to dig it all out. Nothing sticks to silicone. Silicone doesn't stick to silicone. So you really got to clean all that out. And if you don't know if you have silicone, and some people don't know the difference, they can't just go up there and feel it and go, yeah, that's silicone, or it's just a urethane, or it's a terpolymer. I mean, there's a bunch of different products out in the market now, but the biggest one is being the silicone, and some products kind of simulate in a touch, so you may think it's silicone, but all that has to be, like I said, it has to be removed. But again, that's why I try not to get into advising, and I just don't want anybody to be upset, but honestly, I really don't have the time at the risk of sounding like a jerk. I'm not trying to be. I'm trying to do a good job, but you can imagine how many emails and, you know, we get from, you know, with questions, and also questions on our channel. Keeping this in mind as well, we don't quote on social media. If you want a quote on yours, you'd have to give us a call. Again, 423-475-7663. You can do that, and then you can send us an email even if you wanted to at contactus@rvroofinstall.com. So that's about it. Everything's done. I think the customer just showed up, so we're going to get him coupled up here, and he may want to take a glance at the roof, and otherwise we're good to go. So we appreciate y'all watching. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. What that does, from what I understand from the algorithms, what it does is if somebody's looking for information on RV roofs, then, you know, this video or other videos will pop up. That's what I'm guessing. So if you want to subscribe, well, we put these up pretty often. You can go through a lot of the other videos we have. Some I'm trying to think of some really good ones that we did that were just a hot mess. There's a Georgetown we did, I think a couple years ago. That Georgetown, we did the whole ceiling, took the whole ceiling and roof out and rebuilt that whole entire thing. There's a Montana that's up there. There's a earlier from years ago, maybe 5 years ago, there is a Siesta, and you can, that was roof we did, and the guy who did that roof put 2 roofs on, put the first one on, messed it up, put the second one on, messed it up, and you'll see that hot mess they did. They did not know what they're doing. So keep that in mind. There's a lot of guys out here on YouTube that'll say, hey, yeah, you can do this, you can do that. There's a couple of so-called experts that are out there, and I watched one of their videos, or a few of them, and I just shake my head because I know things are going to leak, and I know some of the stuff they've done, they have to have leaked, because there's just no way things go together like that. So if they're not, I don't think they mention that, but on their video, I haven't seen mention, hey, yeah, we had a leak, we had to fix it. But you know, if we have any issues, obviously we want the customer to come back immediately, and let's stifle any leaks at all. But you know, that's like almost unheard of. And I'll be honest with you, some of the biggest problems we've had are with these skylights, with them fracturing, and that's why we do them differently. Some of these ones, like I said, they're manufacturer's defects on a lot of them. But that being said, especially if you had a cambered roof, if you had a roof that had just a little bit of a camber, that wants to lay down flat, like just a flat piece of glass. And if you just make this end tighter and that a little tighter, now it's got that little stress going on it, and it only needs a little bit of stress to crack it. So that's one reason why we don't put any screws in them anymore. So, and if they come back for inspection, we take all the screws out, and then what we'll do is just load them, because the product that we use underneath there, it's not coming up. It won't come up. If you have to replace that, you're going to have to rip up that whole entire lens, and you're going to have to. It's not coming up. So, well, anyhow, like I said, I appreciate y'all watching, and we'll see you on the next one.